So I wiggled my body down and tried to leap over into this other rock. Missed, hit my leg, and fell back into this snake impressed waters, snapped my tibia and fibia. I'm by myself. There's no phone reception. And so I started screaming, and eventually someone was coming through the reeds like these bulrushes, and I was convinced there was snakes going to come and get them. Found out where I was, had to walk, I think 25 minutes back to the top of the rim of the gorge to try and get reception to call people in. Turned out to be a 7-hour rescue.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lizbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Your host is Lizbeth Meredith. She's an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and thrivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
For sisters and brothers, I was planning to take a break from recording when I came across the name Tzara Attwater. And you probably know already, if you've been around a minute, that I am curating an anthology for solo women travelers. Tzara is more than a solo women traveler. She is a relationship coach and also has built her business and her mission on helping people understand their attachment styles in relationships and to stop overthinking and to help people who really are anxious. If you have any friends or family, or if you are the person who needs reassurance constantly that the person that you care about is alive, that they're well, I haven't heard from them, oh no, needing to check in all the time, Tzara helps with those kinds of issues. I know there was a trip for her that helped bisect her life and put her back on a path of success. And so I really am interested. I'm interested in travel stories because if it weren't for me finally taking the lead in my own life and saying, yeah, I may be waiting to be rich or coupled or braver. I've already missed the age of opportunity where I could have backpacked around the world because that's for the young people, right? Ages 18 to 25. If I hadn't addressed that was a big goal of mine, and yet I felt that there were so many barriers keeping me from it. If I hadn't booked that first trip, I don't think I would have ever written my first book that became a movie that allowed me to do some other things in life after I retired in criminal justice. So I definitely feel like there's power in a person choosing to greenlight their own dreams. And for solo travel, especially, there's for older women who've chosen to take trips on their own, it sometimes means I'm not in charge of everyone else's joy on this trip. I'm not the cruise director. I get to choose if I want to eat out at a restaurant today or not. I get to choose the excursion or to lay in bed all day and read my book. They stop finding themselves at the bottom of their list. And that is so powerful for those of us who were on the bottom of our priority list due to beautiful things like raising a family or caretaking parents or whatever it may be. There are times when we do it and it's lovely and necessary, but there comes a time when it is so very powerful to find ourselves at the top of our own list of priorities. So I'm hoping that we have a great conversation. As ever, I'm thrilled that you're here. Learn more about the book, the anthology. It's for women over 40. Well, let me put it this way. For women who, after the age of 40, used travel to rediscover themselves, to heal from something, to finally greenlight their dreams, whatever it may be, those are stories I want to hear. So find me at lameredith.com and you can find my call to action in the show notes. And thanks for for being here. I know you could be other places, and you've chosen to be here right at the moment.
Been for a while.
Tzara Attwater, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so thrilled to make your acquaintance. And did I say your first name correctly? Do you call it Tzara?
100%.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
it's silent T. And just to get you off the hook, I've been called Tarzan before. So I'm definitely not Tarzan. I don't have hair on my chest and I don't yodel and I don't have a pet monkey, but we're good with Zara.
People, for those who aren't on YouTube hearing this, your name is spelled Tzara. And so that's why a dyslexic person may call you Tarzan. But oh my word. Well, I was so excited yesterday when I saw that you are somebody definitely who does work with people, enhancing relationships. And I love the things that you talk about, like anxious attachment styles, all of that. But what I was so interested in, because that's how I roll, as I was interested in your solo travel trip, because often when we as women, especially women over the age of like 25, when we choose some radical thing for ourselves, like you did, there was something preceding it that you're working through or you're rediscovering your strength. So I'd love it if you could share that with us before at the end, we always circle back to where can we learn more about your coaching business and you. But you just have such an amazing story. So thanks for being here.
Well, they say your mess is your message, right? And
Right.
so I think
It's true. Your message. I love that.
yeah, mess is your message. And so the story really started just before COVID. I mean, a little bit before. I was in a 10-year relationship with someone I was totally in love with. You know, on paper, it looked like I had won the relationship lotto. He was handsome, intelligent, he was financially secure, and I really thought we were building a life together. But yeah, I ended up walking in on him in bed with my best friend. So
Oh.
yeah, so anyone who's been through that betrayal will really resonate with, the voice that was screaming in my head, Mayday, Mayday. We've just
Oh,
lost Kevin. That was just awful. So
it's
yeah,
not just your relationship with him, it's your relationship with your best friend, it's the betrayal, it's all of that.
Yeah, it was a real multi-layered devastation. I mean, I really felt like I'd been hit by a bus, like literally everything broken inside, but I had no bruises to show for it. So it was really a question of just having to regroup and picking myself up. And you know what I know now when I look back at that is the damage wasn't caused by what they did. It was what I did to myself afterwards, which was the way I spoke to myself, which was, how could you have been so stupid? What's wrong with you? Why didn't you pick up that message? Why didn't, he obviously didn't love you. All of this narrative that I was telling myself that actually caused the real damage. And so I decided that I had to change the story, change the narrative. And then, COVID hit. And so in this lockdown, and so I was already not in a kind of good place, sort of the way I was treating myself. And I was in this 1-bedroom, tiny little unit. And we couldn't travel, we couldn't go anywhere. Now, one of the things that I've always done all of my life, it's a little known secret about me. I've traveled all over the world to see solar eclipses.
Oh,
Just
okay.
my little shtick, if there's a solar eclipse happening and it's actually on Earth, on land, should I say, rather than out at sea, I'll decide, right, that's the country I'm going to go and visit, and I'll spend a couple of weeks before or after the eclipse to travel around that country and really immerse myself in that culture. So it's my little shtick, and so I'm not feeling too good. COVID's hitting, and so I go, all right, where's the next eclipse happening? Turns out it was in the west coast of Australia. So it was happening. So this was in 2021, around that time, 2021, I think it was. And the eclipse was happening in 2023. So I thought, right, I've got a good year to buy a van. I'll build it based on YouTube videos, and then I'll drive there. That's how I'll do it. I'll just go, and that's going to be my thing. So that's exactly what I did. And in the process of doing it, I was armed only with a jigsaw. I've never built any cabinetry or anything before, but I literally stripped out this van, I soundproofed it. I did some rust proofing. I put all the electrics in. I built the walls up around. I drilled a hole in the roof to put a fan in. I must have spent about a week trying to convince myself that that was okay and I could do it. And, I put the drill in the top of the roof and put a hole in. I'm like, okay.
How
I
did you
started
learn to
my
do
business.
this? How did you learn? Did you watch YouTube or what did you
Just watch
do?
YouTube videos. I
Oh,
kid you
you
not.
darn.
And so, yeah, I was just like, I'm going to back myself. I'm not, if anyone makes a mistake, it's me that's making the mistake. I'll take the responsibility. I'm going to, work this out. And, you know, there were times when I needed to get, hired help, like a tradie to come in and help me put the roof rack on because I just physically couldn't do things. And then it got to the point where I had to build the cabinetry and I had all these ideas about what I wanted to do. I couldn't stand up inside the van. I'm 5'11" in height, it's 180 in height. So I can't stand up inside the van. So the idea was to have the sink near the window so I could stand up on the outside and do the dishes from the outside, standing up.
Okay. Smart.
So little things like this that I had worked out. There was a hole between the driver's side to the back of the cabin. There was a hole there. So when I'm sleeping, I decided I was going to put a blind over this hole to cover the hole up. And that turned into a movie projector screen. So I had a little kind of projector screen inside. So all these little things that I had, these design ideas that I wanted to do. The van is amazing. But when it came to the point of actually building the cabinetry, there was no way I was going to be able to do it with a jigsaw. There was just no way. I couldn't even cut a straight line. So as luck would have it, there was a company, an incredible company that was working about 5 km from my house that had lost all the work through COVID. They do like build exhibition centers. So at exhibition halls, they'll go in and they'll create these incredible bespoke kind of designs for exhibition centers. So maybe a huge aeroplane or a massive teddy bear or whatever the thing is that is needed. And so I called them up and I was like, have you ever built a van? They had never built a van before, but because they'd lost all of their work, they were like, yes, do it. We'll do it. We'll do anything. So yeah, sure enough, I took the van over to them and they did the most amazing job. They worked really closely with me, really nailed the design. They did such an incredible job. I can't, hands down, did the most amazing job. And so then it got to the point where, again, I've started, so I must finish. I must get in the van and start traveling around. And so, yeah, on the 15th, the 16th of August 2022, I left Sydney and started my trip around Australia. Yeah, slowly going around. And I was on the road for 2.5 years, circumnavigated all the way around, had the most incredible experiences, falling into holes. Having breakfast one morning, I was on this peninsula up in the west coast. It was just amazing. The sand was the dusty, rusty red, because of the iron ore that's in the earth. The beautiful kind of red sand. And I had got up onto this peninsula and it was a 360-degree view of the ocean. It was just spectacular. And there's nobody there. I haven't seen anybody for at least an hour's drive to get there. So I'm in the middle of nowhere. And as I'm making dinner, I can see these footprints in the sand. And I'm trying to work out what kind of animal it was because it looked like it was a fairly big animal, but I wasn't really sure. And I paid it no mind. Went to bed. In the morning, I'm making coffee. And then sure enough, this emu has just poked its head around the van. 2 of these wild emus just coming really inquisitive, really coming up close to the van. And I thought, this is quite cool. This is quite cool. But then there's this other part of me, and are they dangerous? Are they going to peck me? Are they, they're
big.
Like, they're big, and they were not afraid. And so that kind of made me, okay, I'm going to be really respectful here. But yeah, I can honestly say I've had breakfast with emus.
That is amazing. What did you do when loneliness set in sometimes? Because loneliness can be whether we're in a relationship and we have a family around us, but certainly when we travel alone at times,
Yeah.
loneliness will roost.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think I'm definitely someone that likes my own company. I think from an energetic perspective, there are definitely people that feel energized in social situations and those that are energized just by themselves. And I'm definitely one of those people that feels the energy. I get energized by my own company, but I also crave that interaction. And so the work that I do in coaching and being in the online space, there wasn't a day that went past that I actually wasn't speaking to someone online. Although it
Okay.
was person, there wasn't that physical contact. I didn't really experience that incredible loss of loneliness. There were moments when, I'd be seeing a sunrise and I'd want to go, oh, look at this, isn't this amazing? Or, swimming in phosphorus at night, through the phosphorus. Have you ever experienced that?
No, that sounds fabulous.
There's these animals that when you swish your hand in the water, they light up, they all become electric. And so at night, when you can swim in, and it just looks like these incredible waves of these animals, they're the size of fleas, if you like. They're tiny, tiny animals. But with the movement of the water, they all light up. Just fun things like that was where I really felt that kind of melancholy, if you like, to want to
Mhm.
share that with somebody. But yeah, so I think I've done the whole trip around. And for me, it was about rebuilding myself, refinding that kind of confidence and being authentic. No longer, when I say authentic, not kind of putting up with things because that's going to keep the peace, or you don't want to ruffle someone's feathers. There's that feeling of I'll just go with the flow. And that's what I had experienced in my last relationship, to my own detriment. And so I'm really about now, real love lands needs something to land on. And so being real and authentic with yourself and finding and developing that relationship with yourself, for me, is the cornerstone to everything. And until you can develop that better relationship with yourself, nothing else is going to fall into place, because you're the only thing that's consistent in every situation you're in. And so that's what I work with my clients now, to try and help them to develop a better relationship, whether it's, following your dreams and finding the love of your life, or going on the open road and following your dreams that way. That's what I'm helping people with now.
I love that. I mean, it's powerful after any difficult time to take a moment and prioritize yourself again,
Yeah.
and to go back and to chase a dream that you may not have even known that you wanted to do. Like, I mean, you traveled other countries, but to help customize a van, not something in your expertise, but you learned that you learned what you were made of, and you
Yeah.
learned some strengths, and things inevitably happen that don't go perfectly. Were there could you tell us a fun example of what maybe went super wrong? I always talk about the benefits of solo travel with friends, but things can go terribly wrong at
Oh,
times. And if you
100%.
live through it, you have a new confidence that you could make it through something so horrific by yourself. So please do. I love this.
So there is this place in Australia called the Karajini National Park. It's Kaj Karajini. It's spelled with a J. It's
Okay.
in the most incredibly beautiful, spectacular place. They've got these rock formations that it's all super red. It's like a sandstone, and it's kind of like a slaty trestles. They're kind of these flat rocks that create these trestles. And the water from all the waterfalls that runs over this rock warms up, so that when you get to the waterfall, you're getting these incredibly warm waterfalls just falling on you. It's the most amazing experience. It's just beautiful. But as some of your listeners may know, we are not top of the food chain in Australia. There are lots of very, very dangerous animals here,
That's
snake
right.
being one of them. And so around the rock pools and in these gorges around the Karajini, there's lots of snakes, there's spiders, there's wallabies, there's all sorts of wild animals. And I decided I'm going to go and trek around the rim of this particular gorge and go down into the gorge to go for a swim. So I think I defrosted some prawns or something and put them on the back of the window because I was going to come back for lunch. Put my swimming costume on. I had a reading book, a bottle of water, and my phone, and maybe a towel, and nothing else. Like that was it. Went and did my trek around, and I'm coming down, and I'm thinking, God, I'm sure the gorge is over there. So I wiggled my body down and tried to leap over into this other rock. Missed, hit my leg, and fell back into this snake-infested waters, snapped my tibia and fibia. I'm by myself. There's no phone reception. And so I started screaming, and eventually someone was coming through the reeds, like these bulrushes, and I was convinced there was snakes going to come and get them. Found out where I was, had to walk, I think 25 minutes back to the top of the rim of the gorge to try and get reception to call people in. Turned out to be a 7-hour rescue. I was taken on stretcher, and there was a death adder came across the track, tried to go up into one of the rangers' legs.
What was it?
A death adder. It's a snake.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very dangerous snake. So they almost dropped me. It was just horrendous. So yeah, I got up. So that was one of the worst things that happened. But then I got flown by flying doctor back down to Perth. My van was left up there. It was a 2-day drive to get back to where I was. 3 months learning to walk again. And then I get my van back, and I decide I'm going to go back to the Carragini. I'm going to go and face this fear, because I've got quite a healthy fear of falling over, understandably. Sure. And so I decided I was going to go back to the Carragini, and I bought the rangers a case of beer, and just to thank them and, kind of put together what had happened. And so I get into the national park, and I go up to the tourist information center where the rangers are to try and find out who the head ranger was. Turned out the woman behind the desk, she remembered me. She'd never seen me before, but she said she was on the desk that day, and she was orchestrating the ambulance and the flying doctor and everything else that was being orchestrated there. She's burst into tears. We've had this amazing hug. She's on the phone to all the different rangers. One of the rangers who had been there the whole day with me was actually working off in another remote area miles away. Got on the phone with him to give me thanks. And it was just being able to give them the beers and just acknowledging the work that they do, because most of them are volunteers, was a really, that just closing the loop to something that was quite horrific.
I love that you did that. And it's just a good reminder. And people don't, I will just say about traveling in general, much less traveling alone, people don't always survive these things. But if you do survive it, you get a good feeling of like, wow, there are some great people in the world who had nothing to gain, and they helped you in a way that put themselves at risk. And that is a beautiful, beautiful feeling. And I felt I had a similar thing, not of me falling and breaking anything, but similar kindness shown to me when I was trip trapping across Australia for the bits that I was able to see. And it was just the most wonderful, inspiring thing that strangers could take interest in someone that they didn't even know and lend a hand. So that is, again, inspires a lot of resilience. I love that. That's a great story. I can't wait for you to write it out one day.
And I think a lot of people actually, when I share my story, one of the first things that most people say to me is, you're so brave, or weren't you scared? And the truth, the genuine truth, or my experience anyway, was the incredible kindness of everybody that I ever came across, that went out of their way to really help me. And that's not to negate that, I know there are some unhappy people in the world, and their behaviors don't always represent the rest of humanity. But my most scary experiences were probably in the cities. And when I actually got out of the city and went into the remote areas, it was amazing. The fact that there was nobody there as well. But people were just so accommodating and so bent over backwards that I think, it would be lovely if, rather than people saying, oh, you're so brave for doing that, but, aren't people amazing? That would be a really beautiful thing to have happen.
They really can be. And we don't ever want to forget that. I think sometimes we don't elevate those kinds of experiences enough or tell who helped. And I think that's an important message to bring
Yeah.
daily in our gratitude is like, there are some great people out there and some people who just will go that distance for a stranger and then are really touched that you remember to say thank you. What a beautiful thing that you did too.
Well, I would hate to think, there's no way I would have been able to get out of there 100%. Without the support and help of people, there's just no way. I don't know. I shudder to think it was just horrendous. And the support that was given was just beautiful. So yeah.
I would
And
be grieving prawns. That's the one thing in this story that's upsetting is like, I love prawns and I know they're expensive.
yeah,
And they probably sat out for a long time.
because I had to leave my van there. My van was in the car park, and I remember saying to the ranger, "Look, here's my car keys. This is my van." They would have to move the van for me because I wasn't allowed to park overnight in this car park. So the rangers had to drive it back to the ranger's hut or wherever. And I said, "There's a load of prawns defrosting. You're more than welcome to them." But that's like, that was going to be my lunch. So yeah, they had to get rid of all of that stuff because it would have stunk. So
I love that so much. That is fantastic.
yeah.
Oh, that
And
is
so
fantastic.
I
How
would
did,
love to be able to share with you and your listeners
yes.
my journey. And I'm all about getting confidence. I'm the confidence coach and just getting the resilience of following your dreams. I've put together a little confidence bundle that I'd love to share with your listeners if you're keen.
I think that would be fantastic. So please do send the links and we'd love to get those.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. So it's just about, confidence hacks that actually work. They really do work. And so you can implement them. They might seem a little bit simple, but if you just start using them, they really will boost your confidence. And non-negotiable kind of confidence tricks that will help you overcome any kind of anxiety. So they're just little practices that you can do on a day-to-day basis. So
Good.
I'm more than happy to share that with your listeners.
I will absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing your story. It is so fun and so worth remembering all of the things, all of the journey. And I'm sorry that it started out with such a painful betrayal, but look how it ended. And,
Yes.
I know we talked about the fact that it's really hard to build a business while you're on in van life, but you're doing
Yeah.
it now and you have those memories that will always have been
Yes.
transformational. And I'm really glad you invested in yourself.
Thank you. I had a dream. Oh, well, if I'm sitting in this 1-bedroom unit in front of a computer, I can do that anywhere. I'll be able to
Right.
travel around and build a business. But I didn't factor into loss of internet, the fact that it would be 40-degree heat inside the van. And I've got my solar panels on the roof. So I needed the heat that I needed the sun. But working inside the van in that heat was just insane. So there's little things that I hadn't kind of really understood. And just driving, 3-4 hours a day, coming to a place, not knowing what it's going to be like, setting up, making dinner, and then, it'd be dark, I'd be tired, and trying to do the business. It was just hard work, a lot harder than what I gave myself credit for. But it didn't matter because I did the trip. I went all the way around and I was able to get enough money to pay for petrol and food. And like I said, now I'm back on this side. Yeah, I'm really
Perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a number of people who live in Australia. I can think of nobody who's been around Australia. I mean, that's pretty huge. It's an enormous continent. I think in America, we forget, I think, often think of it as a country, just another country. Well, it's a continent. It's huge.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
yeah,
think the mileage, I don't know whether you work in KM, I don't know what you work in, but it was 3,300,000 Ks or something. I've got clocked up on that.
my
200.
word.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Did your van ever break down?
A lot. Yes. I
great.
think yes, there was one time before when I first bought it, within about 3 or 4 months, the head gasket blew off the engine. So I needed to get a reconditioned engine put in, which I thought, phew, at least I've got this done before I leave. Happy days. 8 months later, the second engine head gasket blew, and I was in a country town called Port Augusta. and ended up spending a horrendous 3 weeks there getting the second engine done. Thankfully, it was within the 12-month warranty, so I had to make an insurance claim, and that was a bit of a headache, but at least I got some of the money back. But yeah, the brakes went. I had to get towed coming through the Flinders Range, which is just the most amazing mountain range. But yeah, the brakes failed on me going through there, so that was a bit dangerous.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
Little things. I think the biggest one was the engine and the brakes, and then it's just I constantly get it serviced and it's checked, because if anything happens to it, it's my life on the line, and so I'm definitely keep on getting those checks done. And
Are
I've
you
obviously
still working and living in your van?
yes, more or less. I'm like I said, I'm doing all the way round. I was looking after people's pets and house sitting while people were away on doing their holidays. So that helped me break up my own journey and, secretly allowed me to use the washing machine. So
Yes, and the shower. So
yeah.
awesome.
So yeah, so I use that. So I've been doing that. So I'm still now I'm on the back on the east coast of Australia. I've still been booked up until November looking after people's pets, and so it's been great. So
Is
I'm
there a
still
website you belong to, or you just know these people?
yes. Yeah, no, I'm on a website that I'm previous sits keep calling me back to come back, so I'm still doing that quite a bit.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, if people want to know more about you and your work in coaching and get their freebie, what's the website that they would go to?
So the website is My Confidence Coach, all one word, myconfidencecoach.com.au, because I'm in Australia. And obviously, I'll send you the link for the bundle, which is on a separate page, and you can contact me through that book. There's a way of being able to have a call with me, which is a no obligation chat. But if you want to go to my website, My Confidence Coach, there you can find all sorts of resources. I do regular workshops. I'm doing speaking events. And like my forte and my expertise is within attachment styles. And so if we haven't really touched on that, but if your listeners are interested to know what their attachment style is in relationships, you can take a quick quiz on my website, which is a fun kind of little quiz to find out what your attachment style is. So again, myconfidencecoach.com.au.
And I did do in the introduction, just talked a little bit about that and how it's really important. The anxious attachment person, if people have had friends, or if they are that friend that has an anxious attachment style, it is a very good thing to work through. And that's just one example of some of the things that you work on. So I'm excited for people to get their freebie.
Yes.
Tzara,
Beautiful.
thank you so much. This has been a pure joy and a good giggle too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And
One more thing I just will share with your listeners, that I have this thing that the greatest currency that we have are our heartbeats, right? We can't ever get our heartbeats back. And so we have to choose wisely what we're spending them on. So from my heart to yours, thank you for sharing your heartbeats with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
it has been. It truly has. It's the best part of the day. Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lizbeth.